I just could not make it through a day without perpetrating some ghastly behavior. I didn't see how I was gonna be able to navigate the world. My one thing that I really loved was attention seeking and video editing, and that was where I derived this crazy plan to become a famous stuntman with my home video camera.
All my wildest dreams came true. Like, I'm famous.
What made you want to change?
The way that we behave is a reflection of how we feel about ourselves.
What are you most afraid of?
The whole art of Jackass is a young man's thing. And to be Steve-O old, it's scary.
If you could impart any wisdom onto our viewers right now, what would that be?
It doesn't matter what you want to do. It doesn't matter what you want to accomplish. What matters is
Alrighty, Steve-O, thank you so much for coming on the Iced Coffee Hour. It is an honor to have you.
well, thank you, man. It's been an honor to be here.
This is so cool. I think for both of us too, we've been fans since like
It's
just
surreal.
growing up with you and Jackass. And I remember like all of us as kids would watch it and then try to like, I don't want to say we would recreate it, but we'd find like different skateboarding stuff and like just try to imitate. And we loved it.
How long have you guys known each other?
5 years.
plus years,
5 years,
just about.
some change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Okay. And you were a skateboarder.
Yeah.
What was your level of proficiency? What was your best
I
trick?
could kickflip.
Wow,
You could
like-
kick
Yeah,
flips?
I could kickflip.
I did
Yeah,
not
and
know you
could.
could.
And I could drop in on a half pipe that was like the 5-foot one.
Yeah.
But I had a very hard time getting up on the lip and then turning back down.
Right.
Yeah.
Hoping.
Yeah, that's it.
But yeah, the kickflip, that's good, man.
Yeah.
Kickflip while rolling?
Yes,
Station.
yeah, no, while rolling. Yeah, my favorite board was 0. For what I
All
just
right.
always had 0.
I'm a
And
big
Toy
fan.
Machine, too.
I'm a big
Yeah.
fan of Jamie Thomas.
Yes, I played him in the Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Yeah. Who he rode for Toy Machine
Yeah,
before starting 0.
I love him. That's
Well,
so cool.
I gotta be honest, when we were doing our research, we realized it is incredibly difficult to introduce you because there's just so much that you've done. So I don't even know necessarily how to introduce you, but if you were to describe who is Steve-O, how would you do it?
I would say that I'm an entertainer.
An entertainer.
Yeah, an entertainer. Or in more simple terms, I suppose, an attention whore.
An attention whore.
I think I've always leaned into calling myself an attention whore because on some level it's inherently self-deprecating. It's a way of not taking myself too seriously. But at the same time, I do believe that attention could be argued to be the most valuable commodity known to man. If you look at how much of the world is driven by advertising revenue, it follows that attention really is a commodity and a very precious one at that.
Well, we want to talk about the revenue and the monetizing and all of that stuff because we actually started out as kind of like a finance podcast.
Of course.
Yeah.
And during our research, we also learned you had a stint in there where you were like, what, doing backflips for 50 cents to go buy a sausage,
Hot dogs.
hot dogs, and then
dogs, yeah.
stealing the buns and then heating
Yeah.
them in microwaves at gas stations.
Buying the
Yeah. Which is surprising because I think it's better known that I had a very privileged upbringing. You know, I was the son of a corporate executive. I grew up in 5 different countries because my corporate executive father worked for all these multinational corporations. So the fact that I was legitimately homeless for 3 years after dropping out of university and doing backflips for 50 cents or $1 or whatever and stealing hot dogs while I paid 50 cents for a loaf of bread. And that was, I attribute that to having been raised with enough pride that I wasn't willing to ask for my father or my parents to bankroll my activities when they amounted to nothing that they approved of.
How did you feel about your financial situation? Because I know nowadays a lot of people that are around that age are just like, you got to grind, you got to go monk mode, work super hard and make a bunch of money. But you, it seemed so far in what I learned that you were kind of okay with that.
I had a pretty pessimistic view of my own future. I didn't expect that that I was going to live for very long. I think that I at my core believed that I lacked the basic skills needed to survive in our society. I could not keep a job. I got fired from every single job that I ever had. I just couldn't do it. And I couldn't get through college. I couldn't keep a job. I just couldn't. I didn't see how I was going to be able to navigate the world. My one thing that I really loved was attention seeking and video editing. And that was where I derived this crazy plan to become a famous stuntman with my home video camera. And I didn't think I was going to live very long, so all of my exploits with videotaping crazy stunts felt like an exercise in packing my message into a bottle for it to be discovered after I had passed a tragic and young failed life.
How much did you make from Jackass the first season?
Less than $1,500 for the entire first season.
Why?
Taxes.
Why so low? Is it because they weren't sure it was going to be a hit?
It was certainly a shoestring budget. I was like with Jackass, I never so much as countered, and offered. Like I was just, it was always just me being informed what I was going to be compensated. I looking back on it, I just view it as I had to pay my dues.
Sure.
Like I felt that I was really not compensated financially for the early days of Jackass, but I was compensated in attention. I was they kind of made me a monster, where I was paid an opportunity.
Yeah. What did you spend the money on? Do you remember?
At that time, it was illicit substances. At that time.
And when did the money really start rolling in? After that came out,
the first season of Jackass, I made less than $1,500. After the third episode aired, I got a call that the show really was a major hit, and that MTV was going to purchase seasons 2 and 3 at once. In their reorder. The first season was 8 episodes, and now they're going to buy 16 more, representing seasons 2 and 3. And they said, because it's a hit, we know we have to pay you, and that's why we're going to give you $2,000 per episode. And I remember thinking, wow, 2,000 times 16 is 32,000. Like, wow, I'd never had anything anywhere near that money, that amount of money to myself. So I was very, very comfortable with that. They paid half of that amount of money largely up front. And after taxes, which they took out, half of $32,000 after taxes was $10,000. So I got a check early in the filming process for seasons 2 and 3. I got a check for $10,000, and I remember thinking, "Wow, this is more money than I've ever had. This is great. I'm gonna deposit this $10,000 check into the bank, and before it even clears into my account, I will have packed up my car and driven from Florida to go move to Los Angeles to take advantage of this opportunity." And I told that to Jeff Tremaine, who is the boss, the director guy, and he said, "You're not driving anywhere until you give me a list of ideas to film in every state between Florida and California." And he said, if I had ideas, my ideas were there that he would fly out a camera crew to follow me cross country and film in every state. So that's what happened. And it was March of 2001. And I got a good leg up on all that filming because I had my own,
Wow.
But obviously that's not where like the money started really rolling in.
Yeah.
A bigger piece of, I suppose, financial security. It came about in January of 2001 when I got a call from a rave promoter in Cleveland, Ohio. He said he was throwing a party. He wanted to fly me to Cleveland for this night. I remember it was January 25th of 2001. He said, I'll fly you in the night of the party. I'll fly you out the next morning. You won't even be gone 24 hours. And I want to pay you $700 to attend this party. Just got to just be in attendance. And my response to this guy was, don't just give me $700. I will light myself on fire.
Gosh.
I will chew and swallow glass. Like that's kind of where I was at with all that. And sure enough, I went out there. I attended the party. It was broken up by cops for a venue being like much overcrowded. I did all kinds of illicit substances all night. Then the next day and the next morning, he found me under his kitchen table, and he said your flight departs in an hour. Do you even want to try it? And I was like, So I ended up staying in Cleveland for about a week.
Wow.
I remember he said, when do you need to be back? And I told him, there's this girl I'm kind of into. I'd like to be back by Valentine's Day. He says, aren't you worried about, like, I was like, oh, no, I got like, at the time I had like $1,500 in my bank account because I'd been working for some .com company videotaping things. I was like, I'm totally cool. This guy, I just saw kind of dollar signs in my willingness to do stuff. And he booked more personal appearance things. The next personal appearance that this guy arranged for me was in spring break. And it was just show up at a nightclub and just be there. But when I showed up at this nightclub, I saw there was this stage that wasn't being utilized. And I was like, I'm going to get on this stage and perform crazy stunts, chewing and swallowing glass, lighting myself on fire. And what ended up happening was that I corralled, I don't know, maybe close to 1,000 people. Wow. This whole nightclub just kind of went over to the stage to watch me do my silly, dumb things. And that turned into a tour. It was Don't Try This at Home tour. And this shady rave promoter guy ended up booking a full-scale world tour. And granted, given that it was all on my name, and I probably could have done a lot better with it. But from where I had been financially to where that got me, that's where I can say I've never been broke since then.
But before we get into that, starting a small business is absolutely thrilling, from that first customer to your first hire to that first real paycheck. But let's face it, it can also be really scary, from the paperwork, the payroll stress, and of course, compliance worries that can just pile up. Well, that's where our sponsor JustWorks comes in, your all-in-one platform for small business growth. With JustWorks, you can get seamless tools for benefits, payroll, HR, and compliance, and all with transparent pricing.
And JustWorks makes payroll painless. Like, imagine running payroll in 90 seconds or less and then setting up automatic payments so that you could set it and forget it. Did you know in 2023 alone, they processed over $25.6 billion in trusted customer payrolls? On top of that, JustWorks gives you access to premium healthcare plans and the ability to hire internationally, allowing you to effortlessly scale your operations. And for every how do I question, their expert staff is just a call away, ready to help support you.
So don't wait. Visit JustWorks.com justworks.com/podcast to join thousands of small businesses trusting JustWorks for payroll, benefits, compliance, and more. Once again, that is justworks.com/podcast. Thank you so much, JustWorks, for sponsoring this episode, and back to the show.
This might sound stupid. How do you eat glass?
You chew it into sand.
But
how do you not
does it
cut
ever
yourself?
cut up your like tongue or your gums or
No, you know what? When it's a light bulb. You'll break a light bulb.
Okay.
And you can chew pieces of glass from a broken light bulb, and you effectively chew it into sand. It doesn't cut.
How does it not cut? Is there a special way?
What it does do is it's very bad for your teeth. Your teeth are effectively sanded down. So not a good habit to pick up on a daily basis. But yeah, that was it was an interesting era in my life, and I had like a bunch of footage that was not suitable for MTV. It was not allowed on MTV, and so it was this same guy and this other business partner that he had who arranged a distribution deal for me to make Too Hot for TV videos.
Those were big at the time too.
Yeah, I had to their credit, they set up my own late night television commercial campaign for the direct to consumer.
Yeah. I think those are the days when the Girls Gone Wild DVDs were like coming up in the heyday. I'd watch Comedy Central, and after 11 p.m., sure enough, that song would come on.
Sure.
And instantly that song.
I had exactly the same format of late night TV commercial. And I never got paid, I don't think, by those guys for those videos, but it did raise my profile.
Interesting.
How far along the Jackass journey did it take for you to get recognized for the first time?
Oh my God. It was right away.
Right away.
The very first episode of Jackass, I had like a very insignificant
role
bit, like a very forgettable, but it was the second episode of Jackass which aired that featured me swallowing the goldfish and regurgitating it into a fishbowl, and that one changed my life overnight. Like the next day after that show, you got to understand that this was in the year 2000. There was internet, but there was no such thing as high-speed internet. There was certainly no
videos.
There's no real way to watch videos. I mean, you could kind of it was a big undertaking to watch any kind of video clip on the internet at that time, and the media just simply wasn't fragmented the way that it is today. So, to be like the level of a hit show on MTV at that time, it meant substantial viewership. Like we had,
it was just so different at the time.
The media was considerably less fragmented, and like a hit like Jackass at that time commanded a fairly substantial portion of the attention span of the general.
When do you think you saw the biggest swing of your net worth?
2022.
Really?
Big time.
What happened in 2022? Was it a positive swing?
Oh yeah.
What happened?
We had Jackass Forever come out, and I had built my own revenue streams that they were set up in a place for all of the media machine supporting Jackass Forever to really just energize all of these revenue streams that I had with the merch, with my tour.
Mm-hmm.
I made it from performing in comedy clubs to booking theaters. And so like one night in a theater, I would be making the amount of money that I would make per week in a comedy club. So like, it was just an exponentially aberrationally strong year.
The one thing I found surprising is that you were doing a video with Wee Man and mentioned that Wild Boys paid less than the residuals of Bad Grandpa.
Oh yeah.
How does that work? Because Wild Boys, in my opinion, was such a huge show. But then again, I guess The movie was also fairly large.
The TV deals with MTV were not very lucrative, and with the movies, we got our profit participation, albeit our profit participation was, I'm not going to say negligible, but a very tiny percentage. Although it was a tiny percentage, it was by the same definition as Spike Jones, John.
Yeah, sure.
So we got that definition, which made that percentage, albeit small, like a legitimate percentage.
What would you say was the biggest net worth swing negatively for you?
2008 financial crisis.
Really?
As far as a percentage of my net worth, yeah.
What happened there?
I mean, I didn't pay a lot of attention to like what my investments were. If I got a financial statement, I would just go straight to the bottom line, be like, oh, that's what I'm worth. Cool. In reality, I had a stockbroker guy who was in charge of half of my savings, and I had my father who was in charge of the other half of my savings, at least what was to be deployed for investment purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a fun competition, sort of gentleman's
cool.
bet. Who's gonna make my money earn more from me? And I believe that they were both just very into the stock market, and so being heavily invested in the stock market in September of 2008 meant that, what was it, 50% of mine,
Did you hold or did you end up selling?
I can't even remember.
Okay.
I can't even remember. And at the time, I was living in a halfway house, having recently gotten out of rehab. I got, but I went into rehab in March of 2008, and my life was a bit of a disaster at that point. I had burned a lot of bridges, and I had just kind of spiraled out of control. And up to that point, I just didn't think that I expected that, I'm gonna, be dead. I'm not, I just didn't ever envision living to be middle-aged or to have a full life. I just pictured it that it was all going to crash and burn and I was going to be dead imminently. And I really dedicated myself to the recovery process. And in doing so, it occurred to me that I wasn't necessarily going to die imminently. That actually I might, not now that I've stopped effectively killing myself with drugs and alcohol, now that I'm actually taking care of myself, now I actually might be less than halfway through my life. I might be looking at many more decades of life in front of me, and here I am, I've burned every bridge that I had in my career at that point. What I was being told about being a man in recovery was that to be in recovery, I had to adopt spiritual principles. I had to deflate my ego. I had everything about being in recovery seemed totally antithetical to being Steve-O from Jackass. So I didn't know that I could continue to have a career in entertainment. My financial future felt very uncertain. And then come September, half of my savings was obliterated. So yeah, it was a scary time.
I'm interested in the rehab. Why do you think you were able to successfully complete that, whereas so many other people fail? What did you have that they don't?
I'm as baffled as anybody. And the only thing I would respond to that is that it's not something that you complete. I think there's no complete. It's almost like saying if somebody were to get into good fitness, good
Yeah.
physical shape, it's not something that you complete. It's like, oh, so you're in good shape. You've become fit, like that. You can become unfit at any time. So I really equate, everything about being in recovery for chemical dependency issues. It's all an analogy for fitness. Like
Mhm.
people say, oh, does the rehab work? Well, the rehab is like the gym.
I get that.
You kind of get out of it what you put into it.
What do you think is the most difficult part of sobriety?
I think that the most challenging part of sobriety would be to completely disengage from the environment that you struggled in. Like when you go into rehab, if you think that you're going to spend 30 days in a rehab and then go back into the environment where you had all your problems, it's never going to work. You have to completely change your environment. And I was fortunate because when I went into rehab, I had been evicted from my apartment. I'd been in this relationship. The relationship fell apart. Um, yeah, and having burned all the bridges in my career was actually kind of, I had zero distractions. I had no home to return to, no relationship to return to, no jobs to distract me. So across the board, I had an absolutely clean and fresh start. And I was told that if I wanted to really give myself a strong chance of success in long-term sobriety, that what I should do is be in a rehab facility, an inpatient rehab for 30 days. And then from there, go into what's called a sober living environment, like live in a halfway house where there's structure, where, I've got to follow the rules, where I've got to submit drug tests and breathalyzers, and where there's real guardrails in place to protect my sobriety for any moments of weakness. And that, to commit to that is probably the hardest.
What made you want to change?
I just could not make it through a day without perpetrating some ghastly behavior that brought about shame and humiliation on just a horrifying level.
Where would you hear this shame and humiliation? Was that other people telling you this, or was this you looking back and saying, I wish I didn't do that?
I think I could sum it up by saying that the way that we treat others, the way that we behave, is a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. I think that there's some kind of a spiritual law in that. And, over the course of my addiction, my self-esteem, my self-worth, it was just degraded to a point where my behavior and my actions towards others was degraded as well. And I would be on these crazy benders where I just, I was just so irrational, so impulsive that I would just find myself lashing out at people. I would particularly be ashamed by actions I would take to try to hurt people's feelings. I became capable of being very nasty, very mean-spirited. I would try to hurt people's feelings, harm their reputations, just despicable things that I would realize that I did later. Oh my, and that would bring about shame. I was broadcasting my downward spiral in virtual real time, if not literally real time, with the advent of YouTube. I mean, this is like YouTube came out in 2005. I was an early adopter.
Yeah,
I was
right.
like videotaping myself in horribly humiliating states, just distributing links. It's like so. That was just the problem. Is that at the peak of my acute intoxication on all these various substances, I would think that what I was doing was just the coolest thing ever. And I'd be committing it to video and then distributing the video links. And then later coming to realize, oh, that wasn't super cool.
Could you ever look back at those videos? Or do you ever like watch them, or what's that like for you to see yourself in that state today?
I have, I can look back on it now and see like having evolved the way that I have evolved. Now I can look back with gratitude at what once was. So it doesn't necessarily bother me. If anything, I'm profoundly grateful for the change that I've made since then. So like the juxtaposition of who I am now to that kind of makes it palatable and okay to be entertained by how bad it was. And that's why I've had no issue pilfering the archives of this humiliating footage and making it into retrospective storytelling YouTube videos and monetizing it. I don't have any issue with that because that's not me anymore. But yeah, that's some pretty outrageously humiliating and shameful stuff.
Why do you think people are drawn to self-destructive behavior? Because it's not just alcohol and drugs. It could also be food. It could also be, doing something that people know is not good for them, but they continue. Why do you think that's so prevalent?
Well, I think the definition of addiction is continued behavior despite consequences. When a behavior is causing harm to you, and not only do you continue the behavior despite that harm, but in fact you cannot stop the behavior. And I mean that's the only explanation for that is that it's literally insanity. It's a disease that's centered in our mind. So
I'm curious, do you believe that everything happens for a reason?
I mean, you get a little bit dangerously close to ruling out free will as a possibility. Like I certainly don't believe in predestination. I think that the laws of the universe require that that we have free will. With that said, I think that on some kind of a spiritual level, that we have a blueprint for challenges that we choose to take on in our lifetime. So it gets a little bit murky where if there's free will and nothing's predetermined, then how do you have a blueprint for your life? And and then I also believe very strongly that there are forces at play that do play a role. I mean, I don't know. It's all super confusing. Things happening for a reason. Yes.
What moment for you do you feel like there was something that was just, this isn't chance, that this was meant to happen?
I had this this terrible thing happen while I was filming a project. It was just the idea of it. I was filming like kind of a proof of concept, maybe a sizzle reel, kind of a thing. I had this idea for a project which would serve to reunite the Wild Boys. It was me and Chris Pontius, and we didn't want to do Wild Boys again because with all the animals and stuff, I'm much more sensitive to animal rights and doing the right thing. But In March of 2018, there was a request that came out, which was largely a response to this video I had made where I found a dog in the streets of Peru, my dog Wendy.
Yeah.
This video got hundreds
Love
of
the
millions
video.
of views.
Yeah.
The most viewed piece of content I ever put on the internet. And, you know, one of the results of this video about the dog, Wendy, got a request from Puerto Rico. They had just had Hurricane Maria. It devastated Puerto Rico. And there were dogs displaced, like, and there was a real crisis situation. They said that they were having this event to mass spay and neuter dogs, and then, did I want to come and participate in it? I said, hell yeah, this is something I absolutely believe in.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I wanted to get a vasectomy as a stunt for this project I was working on. But I thought, I'll go to support this spay and neuter, in Puerto Rico, and I'll get a vasectomy there, tied into it. And then I thought, I'm going to go to Puerto Rico anyway, and they need help, and we could really be spearheading this campaign to promote tourism in Puerto Rico to help them, and it felt very organic. It was like, it didn't feel like creating positive, like I hate artificial positivity in general, but this felt like organic, and I thought, wow, what if we made a bigger thing out of this trip? We got the dogs thing, we got the promote tourism. Maybe we'll do like a kind of a format of like the Wild Boys, and we get into all this crazy wild stuff. We're actually going to places that need help, and we'll be ambassadors of goodwill. So we're there, and it's like our second day of filming, and we've got this this thing. We're going to mess around with jet skis to show us having fun and promoting tourism. And, I said, let's tie ourselves together with a rope, and we'll just punch jet skis in opposite directions, boom, and get yanked off. And this producer guy who I hired, he said, oh man, that could really, cause a spinal injury. He said, you do it with the bungee cord. Like, okay, well, that makes sense. Sure, do it with bungee cord. So it was called it the bungee tug of war. It was just the craziest thing because we had a massive crew. Like I went there with a crew of 10 people. And then on top of that, there were all the other people there that, were on the set. It didn't occur to anybody that in us, like, doing a tug of war with a bungee cord, like, what if the bungee cord breaks? And that's what happened.
No.
The bungee cord broke, and this guy who was in the water, it struck him. It struck him in the head. And it was turned into a really crazy lawsuit, which only just recently ended under totally undisclosed, confidential terms.
It's a long lawsuit.
Yeah, 6 years.
Yeah,
6 years, and God, just a very, very unfortunate, like, for that many people to have been in that situation, like that there was some kind of the universe manipulating the situation for that to even be possible, because I just can't believe that many people were involved and nobody thought that was a possibility.
Although, you know what, before we go into that, one of the toughest parts about running an online business, like my own bankrollcoffee.com, is driving organic growth through SEO. For anyone who's tried, it can be very complex, very hard to master, and sometimes it's just incredibly confusing.
Exactly. SEO is crucial for ranking higher on Google, which is very important, but unfortunately learning about it is extremely difficult. And that's why today's sponsor, Siona by Style AI, is a total game changer. Siona is the all-in-one AI SEO platform that makes optimizing your website simple and way more affordable than traditional SEO agencies.
Right, SEO used to be juggling a whole bunch of tools, endless settings, and hefty fees. But with Siona, everything is simplified. It gives you a straightforward SEO strategy without the stress and without breaking the bank.
What I find cool about Siona is that it goes way beyond the basics. It powers your website with automated code optimizations and keyword-rich blog posts that boost your search engine rankings while you sleep. It's kind of like having an SEO expert constantly fine-tuning your site so you can spend your time doing things that actually matter, like growing the business.
Plus, it scales with your business. Whether you're running a small blog or a large e-commerce site, Siona makes sure your content is easily discoverable, driving more business and letting you focus on what's the most important.
And here's how easy it is. Just plug in your website URL and Siona gives you a free SEO audit and score at usestyle.ai/Siona. It's really that simple.
And when you're ready to level up, use the code ICH for 20% off.
Again, that is usestyle.ai/Siona to get your free audit and your free score today, and you can see the difference Siona can make.
Thank you so much, Siona, and now back to the episode.
And there was another one where I was filming these pyrotechnic stunts, one after another, and each one like more reckless than the one before, and I kept getting away with, each one, and I thought, well, I gotta get kind of hurt, So what it ended up in me laying down in a bed of rocket engine fuel, and my buddy's lighting it, and I was wearing nothing but a t-shirt. And I ended up with third-degree burns that were so heinous. I had skin graft surgery on 15% of my body. Looking back on that one, how I thought that I was going to, get away with that. And that was just a particularly weird episode where I felt that there was some kind of other forces at play.
Yeah, do you think that maybe like someone or something is like watching over you to make sure that like
I do believe that I do believe that I've got some kind of a network of angels.
What are you most afraid of?
I think I have very similar fears to the average person. I think typically fears are derived from losing everything that you have and or not getting the things that you want. Yeah. I mean, I think that losing everything, like being broke, like that's probably my biggest fear.
Being broke.
Yeah, like I think that it's particularly easy to lose a lot of money. All you got to do is save a lot of money. I think that it's pretty incredible how it's possible to lose everything.
Well, I think even in that lawsuit example, is that could get insanely expensive with relatively uncapped potential liability on something like that.
For sure.
Is he okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Definitely is okay.
What is your biggest insecurity?
Like I've got this trademark voice, very recognizable. Yeah. If I call to order a pizza, there's a strong chance that the person on the other end of the line is going to say, "No way, dude, is this Steve-O?" And that's something that that's it's trademark.
It is.
Like I know that my fiance, she loves it, but I at times find myself very insecure and self-conscious of what a piece of shit voice I have.
That was not what I was expecting.
Yeah, that's not what I was expecting at all.
At all.
Yeah.
For me, it's very much of a trademark. Like I wouldn't even think of anything other than attributing that voice to you.
Right. I mean, like it's far more recognizable than my actual appearance.
Do you know like what it is about your voice that makes you bothered by it specifically?
My concern, my fear, my insecurity is that it's unpleasant to listen to.
Wow.
Okay. If it makes you feel any better, I mean, it
unexpected.
never bothered me.
Yeah, I mean, in the
At
past
all.
few days, I've listened effectively to your voice nonstop.
Oh, wow.
You
It
probably listen to your
it
voice
hasn't
like 10,
bothered me
10
at all.
hours
Well,
of your
that means
voice.
the world to me.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, and you know what I also think too, that if you ask most people, I suspect most people, when asked what they're insecure about, would not be inclined to give an honest answer, and that in declining to give an honest answer, what they're effectively doing is
Packaging it.
yeah, like bottling it up so that it can fester and have more power over them. And I do subscribe to being transparent, to just saying, you know what, like I find myself very self-conscious about my voice, and having said that openly and honestly, took a little bit of power out of it. And your guys' response was appreciated by me.
That's just such an unexpected
It really
answer.
is.
Yeah.
Now, what about, because we were talking on your podcast
Yeah.
about the process of aging
Yeah.
and how you felt like you are known as Steve-O,
Yep.
but your body might not always be able to keep up with that. And what is,
it was like,
in what way, if you could explain it?
what I was saying is that
Yeah.
my identity
Yeah.
is very tied to adolescent behavior, you know, like recklessness, immaturity. Like the whole art of Jackass is a young man's thing, and to be Steve-O old, it's scary, you know. Like I've felt that somehow it's not okay for Steve-O to be old. And as I was saying, that Kevin Smith, he pushed back on that.
Yeah.
You know, he pushed back on that strenuously, saying that he can see a future for an edgy old Steve-O to be very cool and active.
What age do you feel mentally?
Man, I don't know that I feel mentally a different age than I am, and it's crazy to say that I'm 50.
Yeah.
You know, 50 years old. Like, it's hard for me to compute that I'm 50 years old. But at the same time, the amount of experience that I have packed into this lifetime is mind-boggling. You know, I really, I was, last week, I went skydiving 25 times in 4 days, getting certified to do a particularly ridiculous stunt for this multimedia tour that I am embarking on. We broke for lunch one day, and these two skydiver guys were talking. And in a casual conversation, one guy was saying, you know, time is the most valuable thing. You never get it back. It's, you know, time, like, and I wasn't even part of the conversation because I was over at the counter, like, we're trying to get my food. And I had a moment to myself contemplating, like, what I just heard. Time is the most valuable thing. You never get it back. And I just had this, this moment of reflection, thinking that, yeah, time, it really is valuable. And I feel that, God, I've been proactive about making all my time count.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think 50 years is a long fucking time. And I can't imagine how any other 50-year-old could have had as much life experience as I've had, even anywhere near close to it.
Yeah. Having so many experiences and having gone through so many things, is there a specific decision or moment in time where if you could go back in time, you would change it? Or what is your biggest regret?
I say it a lot that my biggest regret is not being diligent about flossing my teeth, like flossing and brushing in general. And, you know, because I've said it so much, I won't spend too much time on it, but some people can get away without flossing, some people cannot. And when I say that some people cannot, I was one of those people who had a bacteria that accumulated in my mouth because of not flossing. And this is a bacteria that brushing will not eliminate. So like, there were just so many years in my life where I would brush my teeth, and like immediately after brushing my teeth, someone would tell me, dude, your breath is gnarly. Like, what are you talking about, man? I just brushed my teeth. And I didn't understand it. It's so the thing is that in our society, when somebody has like an odor emanating from their mouth, like it's not like societally okay to tell them. And in the case of had people who have this bacteria in their mouth, they themselves can't detect it. So no one will tell you you've got it, and you don't know you have it yourself. So you just go through life like just being foul and offensive to anybody who's within speaking distance from you. And it's tough, man.
One thing I really admire about you is even shown when prompted what your biggest insecurity is, which is like this sense of like lack of embarrassment or shame. What would you say is the most embarrassing moment when you think back?
I'm not going to say that I'm like impervious to embarrassment or shame on any level.
Was there ever a stunt that that was like too embarrassing to do?
I was terribly embarrassed super recently over the way that I backed out of doing this big stunt that I told everybody I was going to go and get breast implants for my new tour. Like, oh, man, it's going to be crazy. I was so absolutely convinced that if I went and just as a gag, went in and got D-size breast implants, this would be such big news, that it would be such headlines that every person in the world was gonna know that Steve-O got boobs for his new tour. And whether or not anybody agreed with it or like whatever, I believed in the sheer numbers as a numbers game.
Yes, because you have to go
great
you have to go and
tactic.
see them.
Incredible market. Like that Instagram photo, that first one, I imagine getting 10 million.
Does it get deleted? Does it get taken down?
That was one of the questions.
Where do you draw the line?
Is a heterosexual man who identifies as a man allowed to be topless if he's got boobs?
And then but then there are men who have boobs that naturally when they gain weight. Should those be censored versus the ones that you get artificially? I think it's incredibly interesting.
And I believe firmly that the list of creative ideas for pranks and stunts that I would film during the 2 months that I had the boobs, because I only ever intended to keep the boobs for 2 months, and then I was going to get them taken out. I just knew it was a nuclear attention-getting thing, and I was just committed to it. Committed to it to the point where it was fully paid for. I had a hyperbaric chamber set up in the living room, which was apparently going to speed up my recovery process to twice as fast. I was going to heal twice as fast by sitting in this hyperbaric chamber. I'd like really, really gotten like shockingly good at acrobatic pole dancing to film hidden camera pranks in strip clubs. Like I had like the level of commitment that I had was like utterly undeniable. And I got to the point of being within 10 hours of the surgery. It was to happen at 8 a.m. on July 11th. 10 p.m. the night before, 10 hours before surgery, I got a call that the anesthesiologist backed out. They found out it's Steve-O doing and of course they found out because I told everybody. I like posted about it. I made it so known. I'm going to do this like an idiot. I just blurted it out to the world. And the anesthesiologist backed out. Then the doctor was didn't want to be associated with it anymore. The surgery center, they were trying to get it rescheduled. And this will turn out to be a story that I tell like ad nauseum. So I should, shouldn't dwell on this too much. But in any case, the next day they're trying to reschedule it. The next day, the day that I was supposed to already have had the surgery, I'm in the supermarket buying groceries, and the person ringing up my groceries is evidently transgender. And in my view, I had never needed permission to go through with this. So, like, I was so perfectly clear on what my intentions were, which were to get attention, to get laughs, to be crazy, wild jackass stunt. Like, that's the next logical step for like what I do. But I felt that here's another example. Like, this was meant to be. Like here, like this, like. I just couldn't deny the possibility that here, like, I'm having this encounter with this evidently transgender person for a reason. And I thought, man, like this sequence of events seems like to be pointed. And I just said to this person, hey, can I run something by you? Can I have a conversation?
That's interesting. Yeah. What did they say?
I mean, I explained my whole thing, and even like down to like what the specific pranks and stunts were, to the extent that I described the whole exercise as being the ultimate statement of body autonomy. I said, you know what, like, I think this is just, this isn't to be hurtful or offensive to anybody. This is just my body, my choice. I'm going to be wild, and here we go. This person said that the my body, my choice thing is great. We're all about that. But when you're in disguising yourself, I had a plan with for a motorcycle helmet to completely cover my face and head. And to be with airbrushing, cover all my tattoos and waxing, no hair, bikini top, Daisy Dukes. With my motorcycle helmet on, riding a pink Vespa around at the Sturgis motorcycle rally, with hidden cameras filming like gangs of Hells Angels bikers, like checking me out, parking the Vespa and walking up to them and then pulling off my helmet and saying, yeah, dudes, what's up? And it would have been like, if I believe that would have been amazing.
Yes.
But I also believe that it would have been more compelling, more entertaining, if the reaction from the Hells Angels guys was one of contention
or disgust of like, wow, what is that?
Even if like it's fairly reasonable to expect that perhaps they would assault me. And in my view, that's what would have made the footage the craziest. And this person who I spoke to saw real issues with that, and that going like the disguising myself to trick people is like something very sensitive, and particularly to make the reveal, which invites or incites like a hateful response. Basically the creative plan there was one to celebrate like hatred.
I get that. It's one of those topics where I feel like it's become such a big
lightning rod
issue. That didn't quite exist to the same extent 20 years ago. And I feel like back then, like in 2005, you do this and it's the hit. Now I think it just comes at it from a different angle where all of a sudden it turns into this issue, and now you have much bigger groups take a meaning to it that you never intended.
Right. And in the lead up to this whole thing, I knew that there were going to be people who were like very hot under the collar about it. I knew that it was going to be a super polarizing thing. And I thought, it's a numbers game, like, let's go. Like, it's going to. So people being sensitive about that, it was just the conversation that I had with this person. And particularly when they described a level of oppression that was genuinely heartbreaking, like, wow. And I mean, I don't even I don't even know that any one thing was it. I just felt that like the the cumulative effect of the whole chain of events like genuinely led me to believe that the universe had intervened to prevent me from going through with that idea.
That makes sense.
I could see that.
At the risk,
And looking back on it now, I'm so glad I didn't do it. You know, I'm just so glad I didn't do it. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm still humiliated by the way that I said I was going to do it and then I didn't do it. And like, this, even the notion that I planned to do it and hadn't yet got traction with the media.
Yeah.
To the point where when I'm going about my day doing random things in public, random people will say, "So when are you getting the boobs?" I was like, "Oh," and then I have this embarrassment just like wash over me, and I explain, "Oh well, see what happened," you know.
I know.
I've just never been the kind of guy to say I'm going to do something and then not do it. And I'm not necessarily embarrassed that I backed out. I'm just more embarrassed that I blurted it out to begin with. And perhaps in equal measure, I'm proud to be the kind of guy who can admit that he's wrong.
That's fair.
that's very fair. At the risk of sounding very ignorant, I think that would have been so funny to see like
I
those
think-
when you're telling me those ideas, the fact that you got good at stripping and like you were gonna go on a Vespa and try to garner attention from like biker gang, like
I think
that,
it's hilarious.
like envisioning that in my head is one of the funniest things. Like the marketing on that alone. Not trying to
hey,
convince you into
man.
doing anything.
Yeah.
I'm just
I
saying.
think we could
that's-
separate it from everything else though.
I
just see it as,
is.
I don't see it as like Steve-O like mocking anybody.
No,
I just see it
neither
as
do
Steve-O
I.
with boobs, which is just funny.
You know what? I get it, and I also genuinely appreciate the kind words. I do consider myself to be a creative guy with a knack for coming up with entertaining plans.
Yeah.
That's
And
a 10 out of 10.
that is strongly evidenced
No.
in the show that I was going to do this for.
Mhm.
You know, like I put together wildly entertaining shows, and I feel really strongly that everybody who comes out to see me on this tour, the Steve-O Super Dummy Tour, that they're going to be wildly entertained.
So speaking of comedy, this aside, do you feel like comedy's gotten too soft lately? Because we've spoken with a few comedians who we've had on the podcast, and they've definitely noticed a change from 2000 or even the 90s through today in terms of what could be said and what's socially acceptable.
I don't know that I feel qualified to answer that because I've never really been like an insult guy.
Mhm.
You know, like
Yeah.
for the most part, I've always been like the target. You know,
Self-deprecating.
I've only I've only ever sought to harm or put down myself, and when it comes to the ways in which audiences and comedy's been policed and the woke, like what has become unacceptable in this woke era, like it's been deemed not okay to be offensive, to be hateful. Like, I mean, I don't know, like call me woke, but if there's less bigotry and hatefulness, like I'm not mad at that. You know, if you gotta like be hateful to be funny, like, maybe. But then again, I'm not the comedy police either, so I don't fucking care. I think that if people are laughing at a joke, it's probably because it's funny.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious because you put yourself through a lot of physical pain. How does it differ from mental pain?
Oh man, it's a great question. Um, for the most part, when I've experienced physical pain, there's been uh, a tangible reward in the like form of video footage, which was you know, valuable. Um, so I feel like I've been handsomely rewarded for the physical pain that I've endured for the most part. Mental pain, it's more insidious and less rewarding. Um, I'm a big fan of a prescription I take called Zoloft, which I believe protects me from like a morass of dark thinking and even at times like ideation of self-harm. Um, I take this Zoloft and I'm free of that for the most part. But I look back on times when I wasn't taking it and it's scary.
How would you describe depression for someone who's never experienced that level of depression?
I would describe depression as that, like, in a word, helplessness, in equal measure, hopelessness. Yeah, like a deep sadness that you feel devoid of hope and devoid of help. It's dark, man. It's scary. And I think that the antidote for feelings like this is to articulate it. I think that again, like with the voicing your insecurities, by like it takes power out of it. If you can tell just another person, if you can speak up about what you're feeling, what you're going through, that I think that is the strongest medicine to get you through it. And I think that in cases when people, they find a permanent solution to a temporary problem, it's because they didn't speak up and they weren't vocal about what was bothering them.
In terms of the physical pain, did you have a certain experience or something where you realized that you kind of had a higher tolerance for it, or
I don't.
Do you not think that you have a higher tolerance for it?
No.
I
find that
do you
so
realize
surprising.
that's insane to hear?
I get a paper
like a
cut
viewer?
and I'm
He freaks out. Yeah.
I had a popcorn kernel stuck in the back of my throat and it ruined the night.
Yeah.
It was all I could think about for hours, and it was a popcorn kernel.
I mean, as a way to illustrate my belief that I don't have a high tolerance for pain, if I did, then I wouldn't be reacting in these situations where I'm experiencing pain. I think that the fact that I don't have a special tolerance for pain is evident in the fact that I react to pain when I'm in it. And it's that reaction that people find compelling and entertaining. The secret to how I'm able to force myself into painful situations is that my desire for attention outweighs my desire for comfort.
That's really interesting.
Where do you think the desire for attention comes from?
Ah, man. I don't believe that you have to be Sigmund Freud to look at my childhood and having the corporate executive father who's shit was popping off, man. Like I was raised by servants and spoke my first words in Portuguese because I was raised by servants, because my dad was the president of Pepsi Cola and all of Brazil. And so like, like my parents had it going on, like their life was popping. And I think that I didn't get the attention that that a baby should get from their parents. And I think that created a vacuum on some level that please love me. Like, like maybe I think that when parents when parents don't pay attention to their baby, that creates a vacuum.
Yeah.
And then that's not necessarily an indictment of my parents.
Sure.
They did the best they could. They didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not mad at them for it, but I think that it just checks out, especially because, with my dad, traveling and being so immersed in his career, and my mom was very active in alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think that it all created a bit of a void where I didn't feel that I was getting the love, and so it's like I need to be loved. Like I looked everywhere for love, and that's I think what attention seeking is.
Are you comfortable being so open about everything? Was there a point where you've learned how to be just so brutally honest? Because it's for us, it's very rare that people speak so candidly or are so open about these situations.
It's a good question, man. I think that there was some I think that's kind of built into me to begin with, and I think that the process of sort of living in recovery, like there's with the whole like 12-step approach to life, like taking accountability and being rigorously honest is really at the forefront. So I'm super grateful to be so conditioned to own up to my mistakes, to admit when I'm wrong, to tell it like it is, and just to be transparent. I attribute some of that perhaps to my DNA, and a lot to living in recovery.
Where does religion fit into your life?
It doesn't. I mean, spirituality.
Yeah.
I think that you look at all the major religions, and there's so much that they have in common. Very like, I almost think that you could zero in on the differences between all of the major religions and chalk up those differences to human error. There's been enough centuries that with the exchange of information, word of mouth, and translating, all of these scriptures, they were written in languages that they've all been translated. A lot was lost in translation.
I tend to agree.
And I think a lot was, like the game of telephone.
Yeah.
The word of mouth distorted a lot. I think that, that would probably draw the ire of many, many religious folks, but I just think that it's all very close, and that the differences I would attribute to human error. But I remember when I was still in rehab, they brought us on a field trip to this church of all religions. It's called the Self-Realization Fellowship. And
that's the one in the Palisades, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually the original one.
Yeah.
Is in the Palisades. It was started by a yogi named Paramahansa Yogananda. And we went to this service, and at the beginning, of the service, they have a special prayer, which is unique to this place, the Self-Realization Fellowship. It starts out, I think that it goes, Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, saints of all religions, we bow to you all. And it just grabbed me as like everything that turns me off about religion is how it can exclude. And this, just by the very nature of how they started the whole proceeding, sought to include every saints of all religions. We bow to you all.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I'm into.
Do you think there's a chance we're living in a simulation?
Sure. And I think that space and time, I can subscribe to the notion that these are illusions.
I tend to agree.
Right. And particularly space, because there's really when you say, are we living in a simulation,
Mm-hmm.
like that conjures up the notion of an artificial reality, which is
Could be like the Matrix.
pre-programmed.
Yes.
Whereas
or something that you control.
Yeah. Whereas I think what my view on it would be is that there's nothing artificial about it. It's very real, the experience that we're having, but it's just not that there's no such thing as space and time, if that makes any
It
sense.
does.
That there's you can travel through a video game to the farthest reaches,
Mm-hmm.
like expansive distances you can cover, when in fact there is no distance. It lives, all of that space and time lives
Within like a
there is
speck
no
of
space
dust.
and time.
Yeah.
It's so I think that without considering it a simulation, that our reality, much like the whole video game reality, actually doesn't take up any space or time. That space or time is an illusion in that regard. That our reality is just kind of a video game that we don't
Right.
know. Now,
Yeah.
with all that said, does that change anything about our reality? No. So it's fun to think about in a hypothetical sense, but to the extent that you contemplate that, you've completely wasted all that time.
So what's interesting is this happened actually recently. I was on Twitter and I read this really interesting theory that Elon Musk was even talking about. There's a non-zero chance that we're living in a simulation. I started doing research on this, finding it really interesting because everything we perceive is really just like, you have no idea your eyes are actually seeing what you're seeing.
Sure.
It's just all signals in your brain. And that would mean theoretically, if you could recreate those signals, you could recreate reality in your head and just experience that. So I started digging into this. I found it really
it's
interesting.
not just sight. I mean, any
Right,
sense.
anything. So I was starting digging it. I found it really interesting.
Senses can absolutely be manipulated.
Right.
I believe that.
Later that night, something happened that the chances of this happening were so slow. I mean, everything had to line up for this encounter, this thing. And afterwards, a buddy was like, dude, I think this confirms we're living in a simulation. I thought, that's so weird you just said that. And I pulled up my phone. And after doing all this research on Twitter, the video I had watched right before that was on YouTube, Are We Living in a Simulation? I thought, okay, that's just kind of weird, the timing of that. But then I got in the car and it connected to a Bluetooth really quickly. And I forgot, like 5 years ago, I set my Bluetooth to You Are Living in a Simulation. And I just completely forgot about it. But
What do you
for
mean you
fun,
set your Bluetooth to?
the
Like,
name,
that's the name of his
the name of this
device.
phone is just you
So
are
when
living.
you connect to it, it says connect to
Oh,
you are
wow.
living in a
Yeah,
simulation.
and I just did that for fun because if people are trying to airdrop me things, it'll come up like you're living in a simulation. I just thought it was like a funny little thing, but all of that happening within the same like little bit. And so many occurrences too in my life where it's like when we talk about are things happening for a reason or things meant to be, there's so much that at least has happened for me that I think the chances of that just are impossible and stacked like one on top of another that I think there's no way this is just random chance.
I agree. There's a book that I talk about a lot. It's called Conversations with God. Does a good job of conveying this notion of the universe being just one thing, which in its absolute sense is only one thing, and one thing can't experience anything because there's nothing for it to relate to. Like one thing cannot have a sense of up or down because there's nothing to compare it to. So the universe, in order to have experience, divides itself into like a multitude. And that's what we all are, is this one thing
Mm-hmm.
infinitely divided into separate things, for which is described as the realm of the relative, and that it's all an illusion, that really it's only one thing, but the universe has divided itself into different parts so that it can experience itself.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, this is the book Conversations with God does a much better job of conveying this idea. But by that measure, if you look at all of creation as being an exercise in the universe experiencing itself, then it follows that we are all equally divine. We're all equally valuable, equally. And to take that view of the universe, it would have to just eradicate any hatred. Like, how could you hate something?
Yeah.
Yeah, how could you be hateful or bigoted towards something that you see as divinity?
Right.
You know, like, and I love that. I really love that. And there's also something that I go on about a lot, which is the idea of life review. Yeah, everybody's heard about when you die, your life flashes before your eyes.
Yeah.
But there are thousands and thousands of people who have had the experience of dying. It's called a near-death experience. And they somehow they've died, had the experience of being on the other side of death, but then coming back into their body and being able to describe
Yes.
what happened. And these accounts that people share, having had what's called an NDE, a near-death experience, are so similar. Like, they're so consistent. And they describe that for however many minutes that they were dead, that on the other side of death, that there's no such thing as time. Like, they're all very consistent about that. They describe what's called life review, where without the limitations of time, they're presented. They typically describe having a spirit guide, guide them through, different chambers and such, like on the other side. And they'll be in some kind of a room, some kind of a chamber, and they'll be presented what looks like holographic displays of moments of their life. And in reviewing these holographic, like, displays of moments, without the constraint of time, with a level of detail that our finite human mind cannot even fathom,
Mhm.
that they re-experience these moments in their life, but not as they experienced them. They experience these moments from the perspective as the individuals who are affected by them. So it's like this concept of the universe only being one thing. And in this life review, you're now experiencing your own life from the vantage point, experiencing the experience that others,
I love that.
and
Yeah.
it's terrifying to me to think of like everybody who I was angry at or who I made feel bad, everybody, like I'm gonna experience as them. And then I find myself, because this is so impactful to me, that as much as I can
Mhm.
to keep it at the forefront of my mind, so that every encounter that I have, that I can be deliberate about having a positive, really going into every little chance encounter. Oh, you want a photo? Like, absolutely. Like, to try to bring love and joy to every
That is so
exchange,
cool.
so that I can kind of stack, my life review for the book. Because there's enough bad shit that I
Yeah.
got to go through, that I'm trying to
Yeah.
stack good shit on there.
I find that so interesting. I've always found the near-death experiences, reading up on those experiences and trying to understand them, so fascinating. And what you said about everything being connected, we've spoken with quite a few people who have done some sort of like a psychedelic, and a lot of the time their big revelation was that they never understood how everything is connected, and like every little thing has an energy to it, and it's all from the same thing.
Yeah. There's one guy I met. I was still in rehab, and he just put it in one way that really resonated with me. He said, "We're all eyes in the same head, dude." Like, it's pretty epic.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a near-death experience?
Not anything like I just described people
Right.
sharing accounts of. I mean, I've had like close calls. If I were to say, like, the closest call that I had probably would have been a scuba diving incident where I was just ignorant of what I was doing, and I had descended like too far too fast. Somebody grabbed my fin, and when we got up, they said they were just exasperated. They said, "You almost just died, and I almost died trying to save you." And I was just like, "Oh, sorry, dude." Like, they told me the sharks were on the bottom. I was just going to the bottom.
Did you not feel anything at that moment?
I didn't know. Like,
You didn't know how
like,
serious it was.
yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I was ignorant of. Like, I had not effectively retained what I learned in my scuba diving instruction.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a boring closest call. I mean, I don't know. Oh man, there was not even that I was on my phone or anything, but my first time visiting. I mean, visiting. My first time going to my home in Tennessee. After purchasing this house, which I now live in Tennessee, it's driving a rental car, and I mean, who knows? I might have been going to like the bicycle store. I wanted to get a mountain bike to ride through the woods. I don't know where I was going, but I was driving a rental car in my town, and there's like I blew through a stop sign right into a lane of the highway. There's like literally a highway. And as a stop sign, I don't know how I did it. I have no idea how I did it, but it was just by chance that a car going like 60 some 70 miles an hour. I just came out. I mean,
Yeah.
I could
That is
absolutely
a
have,
hilarious answer as Steve.
I could absolutely have just been killed in that moment because I don't even know.
But see, I look at moments like that because things happen to me where it's like, I lost my phone. It's somewhere in the house. I got to find it. I'm 5 minutes late. And I think to myself,
Yeah.
if I were 5 minutes earlier, would that have led to something like that where you just
Yeah.
collide at that exact moment?
Yeah.
And is that one light that you hit stopping you from reaching another point like 20 years from now because like,
Sure.
you misplaced your wallet? Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been terribly pathetic if that's how I died. You know,
Blue stop
like,
sign.
That would have been crazy.
yeah, like and it just it really affects me. I go like on a almost daily basis. No, not almost. Very regularly, I stop at that stop sign every time. I just think, whew, the worst like
Gee.
moment of thoughtlessness.
This is kind of a crazy question. It's a little off beat, but I'm just so wildly curious. You mentioned on another podcast that you went on that you've done like nearly every drug, like in the book.
Never smoked, never did.
Was there a reason why you drew the line there?
Yeah, my mom made me go to rehab in 1995. Just to age myself even more. I was 20 years old in 1995. It was her condition for bailing me out of jail. They called her collect from jail where I was locked up for drunk driving. She said, I'm not bailing you out unless you go straight to rehab. And I didn't want to be in jail, so I agreed to go to rehab. And I mean, again, I was 20 years old. Like, I wasn't even legally allowed to have a drink. Like, it wasn't in the cards for me to be really serious about sobriety at that time. But what really I took away from the experience of being in that rehab was that I noticed, or I perceived that in the rehab there was like a hierarchy of respect based on like how messed up you were. You know, like it was like, oh, like it's almost a badge of honor. Like, you know, that we would always be in like a big circle, you know, kind of sharing our feelings, like what was, you know, was going. And on a daily basis, like one person would like sort of graduate, like they would leave the rehab and you know, another person would come in. And you know, the new person would come in and introduce themselves to the group and state what their drug of choice was, you know, like why they were in the rehab. And I remember there was just like I just got this sense, like there's one guy walked in and it was like offensive to the group that this guy said his drug of choice was marijuana. You know, like people seem to be offended by that. Like, oh, dude, get out of here. You know, and you know, like if the person's drug of choice was like it in some cases it seemed like they would be like carried in, you know, like they were like read like, oh, the person just came in, like we'll see them in a couple of days, you know, they're gonna be like, you know, like I got a real sense of being like, whoa, like gnarly, you know, like don't mess with that. And the other thing was like if people walked in and said their drug of choice was crack, it was just like, oh, I just got the sense that person's a write-off.
Wow.
Like people would describe like having, you know, addiction issues for decades. And then they took a hit, then they took their first hit of crack and lost everything like so fast, you know, like, and then again, it was 1995, like was still came out, I guess, in the late 1980s. So 1995 at that time, like was at its like peak destruction.
That's still interesting though that you drew the line there, because you also mentioned you'd go on these like 3-day benders where you'd just be on nitrous oxide
Yeah.
like 24/7 to the point where you'd inhale like a full thing.
I would do
And
my
then-
best to not inhale anything but nitrous oxide.
Exhale, and then
Yeah.
the next one was another whole thing. So just depriving yourself of oxygen.
Yeah.
You said your lips would turn blue and you'd even go
For
into states
sure.
of psychosis. But even in that state of psychosis, you would draw the line.
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's just fascinating. Like, it would just never, there's no
Right.
world in which it would have happened.
Yeah. Like, I was just not.
So you had a
Yeah.
boundary.
Yeah, heroin is something because I read stories on Reddit. There was a user who wanted to try, not a drug user at all, but just wanted to try it just for the sake of being able to say that they've experienced what that was like. And they wrote this whole expose about, here's my plan, how I'm not going to get addicted, I live a clean life, I just want to be able to try it. And they ended up trying it, liking it enough to feel like, hey, it's actually not as bad as people say. I had a great experience with it. Let me keep doing it. Kept doing it, became insanely addicted to it. And it completely ruined his life from one time trying it.
I
and
believe it.
It's mind-blowing that there are substances that they're so powerful that just change the way your brain chemistry is worked.
The scariest thing that I heard about heroin was not even like the destruction that it does to you while you're on it and while you're addicted, but while you're in the recovery process and you're no longer taking heroin, the fact that you exist on a plane of kind of just black and white. Like nothing is as exciting or as joyful or as happiness inducing as when you were high on.
That sounds more like a Chris
Exactly.
situation.
Hmm.
Like with when you're withdrawing from it, like you're actually sick. There's not like it's not simply a lack of joy.
Well, I was talking about like
Like
for the rest of your
years
life,
later, like
is
10
what I'm
years
saying.
later.
Like for the like till the day you die, like it's kind of just like
People are
like-
describing it as though it's like they've never had an experience that's even 10% of what their experience was like on that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I would push back on that.
Okay.
The idea that the rest of your life is going to pale in comparison to the experience that you had. And to qualify that position, I believe that it's the addicts and alcoholics who achieve long-term sobriety who are the luckiest people, period. And granted, it's a very small percentage of alcoholics and addicts who do achieve long-term sobriety. I think that, like in the big picture of the entire population, I think it's about 5% of alcoholics and addicts who actually like are long-term sobriety. Wow. But those 5%, man, very lucky, because any other disease that you can fall sick with, the best you can hope for is to get back to as healthy as you were before you got sick. But for us, when we treat our disease, we actually become better versions of ourselves than we ever were before. Like, I believe that strongly. And I believe, not only do I believe that strongly, I believe that I am evidence of that, because there, in my view, there is no younger version of myself who is a better version of myself than I am today. And I attribute that to having, the accountability, the honesty, like like having that kind of like conditioned into me with this, this adopting of a spiritual approach to life. Like it's a big ass deal, man. It's a big ass deal, and like so many people are worried, like, oh, but I know I got a problem with drugs and alcohol, but if I get sober, life's gonna be boring. I can assure you that my life is not boring.
How do you want to be remembered?
I used to be so worried about it, about how I was remembered. Like, I described the early days before I could even call it a career, like the early days of me capturing stunts on video. Like I was packing my message into a bottle, thinking that I might just be discovered after I died. It was so important to me. Like I literally looked at the video camera at what I was doing, capturing things on video, as my way of becoming immortal. I was like, we're all going to be dead. We're all going to be dead. But if people are watching videos of me after I die, then I'm not technically dead. Like I will live on. So I placed so much importance in the permanence of video, documenting things on video. And I cared so much about being remembered beyond my lifetime. I remember too, like way before Jackass, I was in clown college, 1997. And, we had this apartment building that we, all 33 clowns lived in. And it was the whole apartment building was occupied by us 33 clowns, except for there were 5 marine biology students. And each Saturday we would put on a show. Like we would kind of write our gags, and they would open up to the public so that we'd have an audience to perform for every Saturday night. We'd put on a show. And then after the show, we'd party. And Sunday would be the one day that we had off. So one night, we'd just done a show. I'm partying. I'm getting all drunk on Saturday night. And I'm in this marine biology student's apartment. It was a girl. And we're drinking together, and I'm explaining to this marine biology student how we're all going to be dead. But because I've got all this rad video footage, I'm actually going to live forever, because if people are watching my rad videos after I die, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
And this marine biology student, I'll never forget it. It was like she shook her head in disgust, looking at me like, she was like, maybe she said, "You're pathetic." She said, "You think it's all about you." She said, "How about if I do my job and after I die, some marine animal, some fish goes in and feeds on a coral reef that I preserved, then I live forever." That's my legacy. I'm a marine biology. I'm a marine biologist. If I preserve a coral reef and it feeds a fish, then I live forever.
Yeah.
It's not all about you, she says. I just thought, even then, I thought, wow. Touche.
That's like a wise thing
really
to say.
good.
Really?
I never would have thought that.
Profound.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that taking into account how impactful that notion is, that we should all strive to have a legacy of leaving the world somehow better than when we found it. That should be the highest goal. For this marine biology girl, preserve the coral reef. That should be her legacy. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to do that. I mean, like I said, that was in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
I would kind of, twist the dials a little bit, and I would go on to describe my calling, my purpose in life. I would say that, most people don't enjoy their job. Some people are not happy in their marriage. Some people have health issues. There's all kinds of different ways that people are stressed out, that people are unhappy, that people need some kind of an escape. And I submit, this would be my whole pitch, that I submit that when people are exposed to my art, that the art I create is compelling enough, is engaging enough, is entertaining enough, that when people are exposed to my art, they are not thinking about their stress, their health, their job. That I don't claim to fix any problems, but albeit temporarily, I absolutely make problems go away. And by that measure, I deemed myself to be a professional distraction therapist.
I love that.
Distraction therapist is a noble,
love it.
I believed then, I still believe to some extent that it's a noble cause, to make people's problems go away. I mean, that's a pretty major gift. It was just one little step removed from absolute self-importance and self-indulgence.
Yeah.
But still in that whole realm, I think now where I'm at today, and we bought this big property in Tennessee to have an animal sanctuary. Like, I love the feeling that I get from rescuing animals. I love that. I love the bigger implications of sharing my journey with animals. Inspiring other people to, like the idea that perhaps at some point we'll forfeit our beloved privacy, and actually, I mean, we're resistant to that, but to forfeit our privacy so that we can invite people to where we live to have their own experience with our animals. I think that there's a moment when you look into the eyes of an animal that you kind of think, wow, like, why would I participate in the factory farming of this creature? Without beating people over the head with righteous, shaming and like, I used to do all that with the vegan, holier than thou, like, don't be, and now I'd love to inspire and cultivate a respect for animals and animal rights, which is just by encouraging positive experiences and not shaming anybody or anything like that, but like just yeah, these could be good things that contribute to leaving the world better than it was before. And thank God too that these aspirations are just a little bit less douchey and self-important. Like the marine biologist said, like, to open my mind to the idea that it's not all about me.
I got two quick things.
Yeah.
First thing is, if you could impart any wisdom onto our viewers right now, what would that be?
A lot of people have asked me, like, yeah, I want to be a stuntman. Like, how do I do it? Like, how do I, what's your advice? And maybe they want to just, if it's not that, or, and I always say the same thing, that it doesn't matter what you want to do. It doesn't matter what you want to accomplish. What matters is how passionate you are about your goal. That's the most important thing in life, is not what you want to accomplish, but how badly you want to accomplish it. And like, when I say how passionate you are, really enthusiasm is the engine which drives accomplishment. And it's fascinating to me that the word enthusiasm, broken down to its roots in other languages, it's entheos. I think there's other like ways of breaking down the roots. It means with God. Like when we're enthusiastic, like we are like doing God's work, you know, like
It reminds you
to
of the flow state. When you're
Yeah.
in that, you tap into something that's greater than just yourself.
yeah. And that's when when we're on fire for something, man. Like so I just think following your enthusiasm is the way to accomplish just about any goal that you want to accomplish, you know, and with caveats, of course. One caveat about like being realistic, you know, maybe like somebody wants to be a big time Hollywood movie director. It's like, okay, I'm not going to say that that's not worthy to pursue, but let's start off with a more bite size, you know, like that's your end goal. That's what you want to. Let's find something that we can realistically, practically attain that puts us in as close to that, as close to being on a track to that as we can. Let's seek out a job as a production assistant, you know? Very reasonable to expect that you can get a job as a production assistant, which puts you on a set where there is somebody who's got this position that you covet. And the closer you can get to that, the more you can glean. And whatever it is that you want to accomplish, having the enthusiasm to accomplish it, do not wait for anything. Start now. Like if you wait for the right time to present itself, fuck that. If you wait to be picked and handed an opportunity, fuck that. Start now, with the one caveat that you want to find somebody who is closer to that goal than you are, somebody with more experience who can guide you. Because if you've got something that you want to get good at and you just start on your own, there's a chance, if not a likelihood, that you're gonna be learning bad habits, which you'll ultimately have to unlearn. Don't go in the wrong direction where you're going to turn around and double back and to even get to the beginning. Find somebody who can guide you enough so that you know you're learning the right way. But fucking A, don't wait for anything. Get started.
It's a great piece of advice. I agree with that wholly. I think enthusiasm is a good feeling to look out for.
Yeah. For sure.
Lastly, just because I'm so curious about this, you have like one of the most recognizable voices, faces. You're just a very recognizable person. How difficult is it to just get things done? I imagine, honestly, anybody between the ages of like 20 and 40, especially if you're a guy, they know who you are.
At the risk of sounding douchey, I would even say that it skews younger and older.
No.
I'm not 80.
I want the brutal honesty because people
like Matthew McConaughey is like, I get older, they just stay the same. I mean, I don't know, like it's it just depends on the situation. I mean, like if I'm going around and like crowded places, there's gonna be
like everybody.
It can be challenging for me to be in crowds.
Yeah.
And like going through airport, I mean, whatever. But then again, with the whole like concept of life review, like every encounter is an opportunity to
make their day.
To have a good experience, which ultimately, like, I genuinely believe I will have. Like, because we are the same thing. Like,
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I met Chris Pontius 2010 at Mel's Diner at like 2:00 in the morning in LA. And I was so nervous to go up to him and just say hi. And as we were leaving, I mustered up the courage to go and say hi to him. the nicest guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, come take a picture with us. I was with some friends. We all take a photo of him, and he pulls out his knife and he goes like this, like he's about to stab one of us. But he left us with such a great feeling after. I still have it. We could put it on the screen here. But I still remember that. And Facebook tells you like what happened a year ago. And I always check that. And it comes up once a year. And I remember that moment.
Yeah.
And I've remembered it ever since. And it meant so much to me that he did that.
I believe that it meant a lot to him. Like he's like that, man. But there are certain situations where it's too it's unmanageable if they know, like if I go to like a UFC event, which like I'll be at on Saturday, like you know, like I'll be in my seat and they'll say like, oh, come over here, like let me get a photo, and I'll go over there, and then I'm just stuck, you know, and then it can become unmanageable. But like I'll throw myself into it every time.